1 year ago, Derby County made the signing of tricky Charlton Athletic winger Cory Blackett-Taylor, and he was supposed to be the next big thing for Derby County to take over from the likes of Tom Barkhuizen and Nathaniel Mendez-Laing. Now, ultimately, Nathaniel Mendez-Laing and Tom Barkhuizen sort of held out those positions towards the back end of League One last season, and Cory Blackett-Taylor struggled a little bit with injuries. Now, we head towards the summer, where Cory Blackett-Taylor had a full pre-season in order to get fit and be able to play for Paul Warne in his system, and ultimately, it's not quite worked. A deal which was Derby County's first fee-paid deal since Kamil Jóźwiak has ended up not really working out. But is Cory Blackett-Taylor to blame, or is Paul Warne? Now, we know, and we're discussing in this video, the interest that is circulating around him from a range of different Championship clubs, most notably Portsmouth and Oxford. And realistically for me, Derby County must be looking at potentially cutting their losses on this one. But it's a deal which Paul Warne really needs to sort out. If Cory Blackett-Taylor is going to stay at Derby County, he's got to start playing some football games. And Paul Warne, at the minute, isn't giving him that opportunity. I think he's made 9 appearances so far this season, scoring once. Majority of those appearances are off the bench. And ultimately, in my opinion, when he's come onto the pitch, he's looked to made a real difference. I think if we go back to the Leeds game, he looked on fire, was really on it. And he's had those appearances throughout the season. We go back to Norwich, where he was a really, really impressive forward in that game. And ultimately, for me, Paul Warne just hasn't given him the opportunity in order to flourish. We look at Mendez-Laing, we look at Tom Barkhuizen throughout last season in League One. Ultimately, they get many opportunities. Mendez-Laing can have stinker after stinker after stinker and still be on the team sheet. And not really the same with Barkhuizen. That's now mantle's been taken over by Caden Jackson, where they don't necessarily have to play well. They just know they're going to be on the team sheet. Now, is there some underlying injury conditions? I'm not entirely sure. He obviously came in and had that hamstring injury, and then later down the line in the season picked up a groin injury. Now, for me, if Derby County want to keep Blackett-Taylor, send him off, get a specialist to look at it. If he needs surgery, let him have surgery. Let him take the rest of this season off and have him prepared for next year, because the big thing for me is that we've spent this £300,000 on Cory Blackett-Taylor, and ultimately we're getting no rewards from it. We're not even getting 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, where he can show that he's performing poorly. Is just not being involved. And I think it's really disappointing to see a player like Blackett-Taylor, who was on such a high at Charlton Athletic, has come to Derby County, and that form, that ability has just sort of disappeared. And I understand that Derby County have situations where they can't really afford to carry passengers, but it doesn't matter carrying a passenger when it's Mendez-Laing or when James Collins comes on the pitch or Tom Barkhuizen. And don't get me wrong, those players can all be effective, but ultimately they do have occasions when they're not. And Cory Blackett-Taylor, in my opinion, quite similarly to Louis Sibley, not in terms of position, but in terms of situation, would get an opportunity, would take it off the bench and then be put in a completely different position, or wouldn't start the next game. And you just don't give those players chance to have a run of football, to get into a position where they could potentially really push on and go to the next level. And that is the disappointing thing for me as a Derby County fan, because surely when you're spending £300,000 on a player, and a player which Paul Warne targeted all throughout the summer, all throughout January, you'd anticipate that they'd have made 40, 50 appearances, 18, well, a year down the line. I don't think Blackett-Taylor's made 30 for Derby County yet. I could be wrong on that. I'll put it up on screen. But it's very, very disappointing to look at the way this situation is being handled. Now, you will have seen the link on the screen earlier in the video, and Derby County are supposedly, allegedly, willing to allow the winger to depart this month on loan. However, they obviously don't want him to go to a relegation rival, which is obviously massively important. We don't want to strengthen those teams around us. Obviously, we want, in my opinion, we'd send him down to League One. Send him back to Charlton, send him to a Bolton, send him to a Peterborough, something like that, where he's going to play football. And that's really what he needs. He needs to play football, he needs to put in good performances, and he needs to get his confidence back. But if it's an injury reason, what's sending him out on loan going to do? Nothing. So if there's an underlying injury condition, we need to solve that before we even think about a loan spell or getting rid of him or anything. Well, you could sell him now, but you wouldn't send him out on loan if he's got an injury issue, because he's just going to pick up an injury and not play. So it sort of defeats the object, apart from the fact we'd get the wages paid and things like that. So it just is a really difficult one. And the type of clubs that are circulating are clubs I'm not surprised about. Pompey and Oxford will have seen him time and time again in League One, will have seen what we saw in order to buy him. And it's all about finding that form again, finding that rhythm for Cory Blackett-Taylor. And ultimately, is he going to be able to do it under a Paul Warne management who isn't giving him the opportunity to play? The answer is no. It's just not going to happen. There's no way to return to form if you're not able to get on the pitch. Now, yes, he's played in a couple of 21s games, but ultimately, that's just not going to cut it, is it? A senior footballer, I think he's 26, maybe 27 now, needs to be playing at first team level. That's how he's going to find his rhythm. That's how he's going to figure out how to perform in the Championship and how to perform in Paul Warne's system. But if Paul Warne isn't going to give him that opportunity, we're never going to see it. And that is the problem that I have right now. We've spent £300,000 on a player. We bought him in on loan initially. We could have waited till the end of the season to bring him in. And ultimately, it's just gone pear-shaped. It's not worked. It's been a poor deal all round, to be completely honest with you. And there's a lot that Derby County need to work on going forwards for deals like this. And we've seen with the likes of Kenzo, Zetterstrom, like, sometimes they have to play through the struggle. I'm not saying Zetterstrom's really struggled. I think he's had a really good start to life. Kenzo had 3 or 4 games where he wasn't really on it. Marcus Harness has had games where he's not really been on it. And it's one of those for me where sometimes you have to let them play through the struggle. You have to give them the opportunity. And that's something which Derby County haven't done with Cory Blackett-Taylor this season. And it is going to be interesting to see what Paul Warne does choose to do with Blackett-Taylor, what the coaching staff and recruitment team choose to do, because if we get rid of Blackett-Taylor, that means our wing options are Caden Jackson, Mendez Lang, Tom Barkhazen and Marcus Harness. So we probably need to bring in another one, because Harness obviously sometimes sits in and plays that 10 role. So it's going to be interesting to see what the discussion is around Blackett-Taylor heading into the back end of this January transfer window. 12th of January as I'm recording, and there's no official talks commenced. No official bid has been spoken about, but I do believe that the possibility is that Cory Blackett-Taylor, just like Joe Ward, will be finding themselves heading out of Derby County, really. Disappointing to think about, really, but it's an opportunity for them to really push on and give themselves a great opportunity going forward. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with that one. In my opinion, it has to be to a League One club. You can let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Turn on that notification bell to stay tuned to everything going on with Derby County. Got a video dropping later on today about Joe Ward. And if you haven't done so already, check out the video from yesterday, which will have been about Lasse Nordas and the Leyton Orient review after that game Tuesday night, which obviously, as I'm recording this, has not been played. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that. If you do want to hear my thoughts, make sure you check out that video later on today, Joe Ward's latest situation. Hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. I'll catch you in the next one.